All right, gentlemen, we are rolling now. Are you excited?
Yes.
Most definitely.
So, welcome back to the podcast, guys. This is Gently Read. I'm your host, Aurora Fenzl, and I am so excited to be in the studio today because I have not one bogey, two bogey in here. So, oh, that's not on brand, but who cares? This is my podcast. I can say what I want. Now, I have two of my guy friends who decided that they were going to help me with this project. And they so valiantly watched the movie Pride and Prejudice, the 2005 version with Keira Knightley and Matthew McFadden. That piece of artwork. They watched that movie and they have decided that they would react to it and answer just a couple questions in reaction to their first time watching that movie. I know many of us Austinites who adore that movie, and we kind of dream of what it feels like to go back to watch that movie. So, ladies, this one is for you. Welcome to the show, Nick and Brayden. I'll start off with you, Nick. Could you tell me just a few words about yourself, like where do you go to school, and you're here, and maybe why you're excited to be on the show?
Definitely. So, of course, I'm Nicholas Koren. I go to University of Wisconsin River Falls, and I am a senior, and I'm just excited to do this because it's my first time watching it. Actually turned out to be real fun to do.
Fun. Great. All right, Brayden.
So I'm Braden Jansen. I also go to University of Wisconsin River Falls. I am a sophomore, and I would say I'm excited to be on this show because I haven't been on a podcast before.
Wow. Oh, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome to Gently Read, the podcast where we, as an I, your host, Aurora Fenzl, talk about anything and everything surrounding the romance genre, including our benefactress, Jane Austen, or more contemporary titles like Bridgerton, or projects that are coming up in the Jane Austen Society of North America, or anything that touches on like cosplaying or costuming, or projects that inspire people that stem from this genre. So again, I hope you stay with us, and thank you for listening. So let's just get right into these questions. So I am not smart. I am not smart, and I went onto the Jane Austen Society of North America, and they had a beautiful discussion list of questions focusing specifically on this movie and the points that you see in this movie. So I will just start off with question number one. In question number one, like the movie and the book, starts with this quote: "It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife." So this first line has become one of the most famous in English literature. So in addition to setting the narrative in motion, how does this line alert us to the tone of the novel and movie in our case, and our role as readers and viewers in appreciating it?
It's a good question. I would say specifically in regard to that, like, it definitely sets the tone that it's going to be more of a whatever, like, the main character man is going to be, like, pursuing a wife, and he's kind of not going to stop until he gets his end goal, and that every person is driven ultimately towards wanting that, especially like men in case of like, if you have all this property, what are you doing if you're not married, kind of a deal. And because of that, like, our role as a viewer is to appreciate the fact that like nowadays we don't necessarily have to follow that same track of mindset or even process as what they did back in the day, because if you didn't have land, you weren't worth anything really.
Well said.
I have to agree with that one. I don't know. I like the difference in characters in especially with the men. It was kind of confusing at first with the ball scene in the beginning. I did not know what was going on with Mr. Darcy, and I think I got the general gist that he was kind of stuck up at first and realized in the end he wanted a wife. He needed a wife. So,
Are you going on record saying that you would not be friends with Mr. Darcy upon first impression?
I have no clue. I'm gonna say yes. I probably would not, but. I don't
Okay.
know.
Okay, I hear thousands of screaming women coming for you. In not a good way.
Oh, great.
So, in conjunction with this question, so what does this line? So, I'm very much interested in your guys' perspective and having you on the podcast, because typically it's just women talking together about this book and this movie. But I'm excited to get some male perspective on this. So, what does this line? Again, the truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. What does this line imply about women?
I would have to say that this could be just me reading into it too much, but that it essentially implies that after you have all this land and all this possessions, that only then should you go after a wife. It's to say that, like, it's kind of just another piece of, like, the, I guess, property to add into at the time. Because, like, when you think about it back then, women didn't have very much landowning rights. And part of that is, like, of course, very different society nowadays. And that also, like, it's just, you're not viewing a woman as someone that you should love even without having all this land. It's only once you got this land that you should be able to look for a wife. And that at the same time, a woman won't want to be your wife if you don't have land. So I guess it's kind of implying in both directions that land is everything and property is everything in a relationship.
Mm-hmm. In this context.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, the social statuses too of men. Back when the novel was written in the setting of it, definitely you can see the like aristocratic sort of aspect of that. And you should probably look for a woman if you have the land and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Question number 2. How does Pemberley play a role in... So, how does, Pemberley play a role in Elizabeth's change of heart? And kind of going deeper into this, specifically, why is Darcy attracted to Elizabeth? So a lot of their, character development and their relationship starts to really gain traction when she goes to visit his house, Pemberley, this big grand estate and mansion. And honestly, like, to give you guys some context, so the number 10,000 a year was thrown around a lot. Do you know would you like to know the currency exchange for today's rate? Basically, 10,000 a year back then meant that he was basically, last I heard, was that he was making £3 million a year.
Ooh, that's a lot of money.
Most definitely is.
Yeah. So with this in mind, and knowing how, he's gaining feels for Elizabeth, as the kids say. Sorry, I'm almost 30. So why is Darcy attracted to Elizabeth?
I think her free-spirited will. I think that she's very... she's just wanting to not be tied down. And I think that that kind of attracted him at first. I forgot what the line was, and when she overheard him talking with, I don't know, the other guy that like the older sister.
Bingley?
I think so. And as she he said something about, he asked her how Elizabeth, how he liked her, and he said, do you guys know the quote I'm talking about?
Is it the she's tolerable quote?
Yes. And then she reiterated that to him, and I think that was kind of when he maybe started to know that she was a little bit different.
It was a good roast.
It was a good one, yeah. I liked it. That was a good one.
Yeah, kind of like thinking to that quote, and also just in general, like, I guess it was like that being free spirited, that she's not like the normal woman of the time, where like very listen to your husband or potential courter. Like, she's that kind of go getter attitude in a sense, that she's not gonna be letting herself be tied down by the marriage. That I think honestly Darcy might have actually liked that, and that also like a couple of the other guys I think actually like that, because it's like sometimes not having that super traditional like just do this kind of a wife. It's a very different change for, especially in the time of the aristocratic era, and like in England, and just the culture at that time is not something very normal to see. So I would say definitely like that, her being able to say that exact line back to him as a response just kind of shows that there might have been an interest there based on both of their willingness to use that.
So I'm translating this as she's not like other girls.
That's very true.
And he's into that.
Very
Yes,
true.
yes.
Okay. You heard it here first. Elizabeth Bennet is not like other girls.
No, definitely not.
So, what might have happened if Elizabeth had accepted Darcy's first proposal? So this is the scene, to give you context, is when she's in that little like pavilion and it's raining and she's like standing there against that like Corinthian column, and it's again, this whole movie, very dramatic. But it's raining and like Darcy is like all sopping wet and comes up to her and he's like, even though I like hate your family and they're super awkward, would you marry me? And Elizabeth goes, no. So thinking back to that scene, what do you think might have happened if Elizabeth had accepted Darcy's first proposal?
I would have to say that it probably would be a much more unhappy relationship, just because, in my opinion, like the weather kind of sets the tone for the scene, and in that it's raining, it's like almost kind of like if this had happened, it probably kind of foreshadowed a little bit that they wouldn't have been very happy, especially because Darcy didn't like her family at the time. So it's something to take into account, that like no one's going to be happy in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't he have something to say about keep forgetting her name, the eldest daughter?
Jane?
Yeah, marrying one of his friends or something like that.
Jane was wanting to marry Bingley.
Yeah, and then didn't Mr. Darcy have something, he just didn't want that or something like that?
Yeah, he wanted to, in a sense, protect his friend from an inadvantageous relationship, because he didn't want his best friend to be shackled with, this awkward family. Because again, like in the proposal scene, he's like, your family's super weird and I don't want to hang out with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely think that wouldn't have been resolved probably as good if they would have married, or
at that point.
Yes, if she would have said yes at that point. So I think that waiting kind of builds the plot to the point where the ending proposal was definitely a great ending to the movie. So I think that was definitely necessary that she said no.
Mm-hmm. So thinking about this scene again, do you think Darcy really expected her to accept when he asked?
I would have to say, honestly, I don't think he really expected her to actually accept the proposal at the time, just because, like, just of how he proposed, too. It was very, like, an unofficial style, and just, like, you already told her, essentially, I don't like your family. They're very weird. I don't want to spend time around them. It's like, what else would you expect after you just told the girl that you're going to propose to? Like, do you think she's going to say yes after that? Like, oh, I love this guy even though he hates my family. No.
I would have to agree with that too. I don't think he, at least if I was in his shoes, I would not have. I would have tried harder to propose to her and waited for a better day and.
A day when it wasn't raining.
Yes, but that's not the biggest point. But yes, I'd agree with with Nick about definitely the weather had something to do with painting a picture in your mind of how that proposal was going.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would have waited.
Very sloppy.
Very sloppy, yes.
So again, we're kind of transitioning into the family now. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett. Before I launch into any specific questions about them, what was your impression? The parents, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett.
Mrs. Bennett was somebody who really cared about whether her daughters got married and who they got married to. So I didn't like her so much, especially at the point where the clergyman guy, Mr. Williams, I think.
Mr. Collins.
Mr. Collins. I didn't like when Elizabeth said no, and I guess I understand why. And the way her mother reacted was very. I did not like that. So that's how I feel about her.
I agree.
Yes.
Especially, I'd say, yeah, I kind of agree with that too. Like, you can see there's a very marked difference in how both the father and the mother responded. Like, the mother was like, if you don't get married, I won't talk to you ever again, essentially kind of deal. And then the father's like, if you get married right now, I won't talk to you. So I feel like you can kind of see, like, especially back then, like, they used to pay, I think it was it the groom would pay money to the bride's family for the marriage? As like a doubt, like if it was an arranged marriage.
I believe upon the marriage, the bride's family would pay a dowry upon the marriage.
Okay, yeah. So then it was kind of like, but also then she's like, okay, he's this high status guy that's like, get married now and go for that status marriage, whereas the dad is more like, it kind of, to me, it felt like, go for this, don't get married now just because he proposed, like, and because it might be a good situation. Like, you should want to get married on your own terms when you actually feel like you love who is going to be proposing to you.
Mm-hmm. I find it interesting that you guys both picked that setting to, like, kind of analyze the parents of after Elizabeth, decided to not marry Mr. Collins, just that we used it as, this kind of like microcosm. Were there any other instances of like observing the parents that kind of stuck out to you?
I would have to say, I think it was when the youngest daughter, was it Lucy, the youngest daughter? Lydia ended up getting engaged to, I can't remember his name, after they had gone away for like a little bit of time or something. And
Lydia and Mr. Wickham.
Yes, Mr. Wickham. And the mother was all excited that, oh, my youngest daughter's engaged. Like, look at this. Like, we're kind of like bragging about it, but also like a backhanded insult to Elizabeth. Like, kind of like, why aren't you married yet?
Yeah. Not great.
For Mr. Bennett, I definitely noticed when Mr. Darcy did the second proposal, and then she went to go tell him, and it seemed like to me he was looking out for her because of what she said about Mr. Darcy in the past, about how he's not a good fit for her, and he was just confused where the change of heart came from. And so I think, for me, to answer the question, I think, did we go over who's the better parent?
We're getting to that.
Never mind. I will wait.
So I guess we'll just ask the question now.
Great.
So who is the better parent then, Mr. or Mrs. Bennett?
Definitely Mr. Bennett.
I would have to agree, Mr. Bennett. Like, kind of like what we discussed before. It's like, just based off of her description of him, it's like, why would you marry this man that sounds like very kind of stuck up, aristocratic, and very rude? especially like if she I can't remember if she actually told him about the "oh, your family is weird" thing, but like just assuming, like, say she did and we didn't see it in the movie. It's like, okay, why would you marry this man that hates our family when, you know, we, for the most part, love you, outside of mom saying, get married now or I won't, like, interact with you. It's just like, he wanted what was best for his daughter, and I think that's what was so important for him, was for her to be happy.
Mm-hmm. So, Nick, you're saying that Mr. Bennett is the better parent.
Yes.
And then, Brayden, what's your vote on this?
I'd also say he's definitely, or not definitely, but I'd say he's the better parent.
He's the better parent. I might play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
Because I think that Mrs. Bennett, she's in a situation where she has no sons. And this also has to deal with understanding the way property rights went in, like, 1813 is when this book was written and when the story was written. The way property rights in England happened was the reason why the land was going to be inherited by the dreaded cousin, Mr. Collins. He was going to inherit instead of, like, let's say the eldest daughter, like, for example, Jane. The sisters wouldn't inherit because they are female. And Mrs. Bennett understands that the only way for her girls to be safe in the future, because again, her parents are getting older and they want to provide a good future for their daughters. So the situation that Mrs. Bennett is in is she wants to, at least in my head, she wants to go to her grave knowing that her children are safe and set up for the future. And that's why she's pushing so hard for, you need to get married. You need to, you know, be secure for the future. So I think in part, like, yes, she's silly and kind of weird like that. But I also think that part of her motivations is out of love and out of love and just a desire for her daughters to be safe.
It definitely makes sense, especially like the looking out for it, especially like knowing that like what the laws are like. Could she have probably gone about like the way she pushed it better? Yes, but in the end, it's like both were looking out for their kids just in different ways, I guess is the way you could look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I think that after you having that newest perspective on things, definitely, I don't think they were both meaning to be rude to their kids or anything like that. But yeah, it definitely makes it harder to choose which the better parent now.
Yeah, and again, this is a hard question because there is no right answer.
Right.
This is all just, you know, and again, it's family. It's messy. It's crazy. I come from a family that we're on each other's heels and on each other's throats all the time. So I appreciate this book at least, and I hope you guys also found moments in the book of seeing, you know, these dynamics between, you know, these family members and just the craziness that ensues. So going off of this idea of family, like what other just roles that you saw the family playing in the movie?
I thought that the sisters were there for each other. For example, the moments where Elizabeth and Jane were laughing in their bed, definitely a sense of family there, and I really appreciated that as well. So
Yeah, I would definitely say that too, but also just when I think back to, like, I think it was when Mr. Darcy and had come with one of his friends, I think it was Bankley,
Yeah.
for some hunting trip that they were going out on, and it was like they all like cleaned up the place together and got prepared kind of, so it's like they're all in it together in different ways, but also then like looking towards like when even like Lydia got engaged, they were still kind of very happy for her that she did get engaged. So like they ultimately know that like they had their moments where they definitely disagreed on things, but they ultimately still supported each other in the end. So I think it was the role that family plays is that there are going to be tough moments, but it's going to be that strong bond of family that will help them succeed, and it ultimately did.
Yeah, like when my favorite instance of this story is honestly when shit hits the fan, the family really pulls together. And that's just, again, that scene at the end of the book when they see, like, Darcy and Bingley outside and they're about to enter the room. They're like, quick, clean the room. Everyone, look pretty. Hide this plate that I was eating a leftover piece of cake on. Hide, quickly. Look presentable. Oh, and I think we've all had those moments of it's like, we're going to have company coming over. So, moving on to more of an antagonist of the story, Mr. Wickham. He's no good. No good. I hopefully, at the end of the movie, we were able to see that he was kind of a douchebag. A little bit. Because he eloped with a 15-year-old girl. Lydia was 15. What do you think?
Which one's Mr. Wickham again? Is that the Pirates of the Caribbean guy?
He is the guy who is the soldier in the movie.
With the blonde hair?
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, so what do you think about him running away or, like, seducing Lydia?
I just think it's interesting. It's like, it's very terrible the fact that his revenge play ended up getting engaged to a 15-year-old. And just the fact that he had already tried once with, like, eloping with Georgiana for revenge, and it's like that feeling. It's like, oh, on to the next revenge plot. And it's just like, how spiteful do you have to elope with try to elope with one person and then get engaged with another person just to get revenge on someone?
Yeah, so the question from the guide says, Darcy said in his letter that Wickham tried to elope with Georgiana for revenge. Does revenge play a part in his elopement with Lydia? And like you said, this is a revenge plot against, do we say Darcy?
I would say yes, just because, like, especially like when you bring up like how land is inherited, like him getting engaged to Lydia means that technically he will now have also a claim of inheritance eventually. But because, like, once you know that, oh, Darcy wants to marry Elizabeth, then it's like, how can I get back at him? And it's like, oh, I can get this land from him so he doesn't get it all.
Mm-hmm. So we notice this repetition of this perpetrating of this really creepy behavior. So from a male perspective, like, have you, like, either seen this in, like, other people, or, like, just your thoughts on seeing this guy be super creepy with these women? What's kind of your perspective on this whole situation?
I guess I haven't seen anything like that really in my life so far, but definitely have heard stories. And yeah, what Mr. Wickham did was definitely for revenge, and it's just very disturbing that he would go from sister to sister, no less, a 15-year-old as well. So yeah,
I have not seen that, but like when you hear about like just how creepy some people can be about that, especially like just the whole relationship thing, it's like, it's very disturbing. Like, how does your thought process lead you to, let me try this with one sister, if it doesn't work then just move on to the next? And kind of like what you said, like, really, a 15-year-old too, out of all things, like, do you not have a moral compass that says, hey, this is wrong, I shouldn't be doing this?
And the worst thing about Wickham is that he wanted to become a clergy member. Like, his original plan was he wanted to be the rector at over at Pemberley. So, like, it just keeps getting worse. It keeps getting worse.
Yeah. I would definitely not trust him as a clergyman, just based off of what we saw from him as just a normal person in the movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No good.
Nope.
So, other characters. Lady Catherine de Burg. Lady Catherine de Burg. First off, I love her for the fact that she's this big, rich lady who is auntie to Darcy. What do you think about her? The old lady.
I'd say, like, when you think about, like, this is kind of harking to a different time, but, like, in the U.S., when you had that industrial boom, you had the new money people versus the old money. She definitely gives off that very, like, old money type vibe, like, oh, I inherited all this money. My family has been rich for generations kind of deal. And it's like, why are you choosing to marry this girl from a poor family? Like, shouldn't you be, like, choosing a much better person for our family? Like, we have our reputation to uphold.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very, your point on the old money versus the new money, or just anyone else marrying into the family. And Lady Catherine de Burg has the quote of, "Are the shades of Pemberley to be thus polluted?" Like, ugh, lady, like, can we just not?
I don't really have that big of a issue with her. I think that she's like Nick said, and you said, very old money, and she doesn't like change very much. And if she has a set ideal for how her life and other people's life should be played out, and if it doesn't get that way, she seems like the person that, like, kind of like an old Karen.
Oh,
I'm just gonna say it. She does seem like that a little bit.
I love this. I now have this vision in my head of Lady Catherine de Burg, but with a blonde bob, yelling at a Starbucks employee.
Does she not, though? I mean, come on.
I can't argue with that. She does give off those old Karen vibes that, like, she just wants to argue for argument's sake. And that it's like, especially that comment of must the colors of Pemberley be
Polluted.
Yeah, and it's like, so you're just assuming just because she's coming from a less rich family than you guys means that she's not as cultured or has as much etiquette. And it's like, do you realize that you're probably the less cultured person by having such a twisted thought train to be like, just because you're poorer than me means you're going to pollute the kind of culture and standards that we have at this place?
Yeah, for sure. So the novel has many universal themes. So we were talking about how, either like economics or, like finding a life partner, that kind of thing. These universal themes that kind of like transcend, time and all that. So, and even like culture. So it has many universal themes that make it relevant today and inspire contemporary spin-offs and adaptations. Go listen to episode 1 where I reviewed one such spin-off. So imagine the Instagram pages. You guys have Instagram, right?
I do.
I don't.
Okay, so this should be interesting. Just think social media in general. Humor me.
I'll try.
So imagine the Instagram pages of some of the Bennett daughters. Who would be the most active on Instagram?
It's a good question. I would have to say, I feel like Jane, the oldest one, would probably be the least active, just because she's like, I'm just kind of doing my own thing. I don't really like care too much what people think about me, but I care just enough to keep up the appearance, but not enough to be like super active. Elizabeth, well, considering the fact that it's kind of funny that she's also like, considering like the other, like the actor herself and the roles that she's played in other movies, it's like, I feel like her character would be active on social media just in ways that we wouldn't expect. And it'd be like kind of like the very head scratching posts are like, oh, that's kind of goofy or like very funny, but it doesn't make much sense. And I feel like Lydia would be just kind of like wishy-washy, kind of aloof type personality on social media. Like, oh, here's all this stuff I'm doing that you don't actually realize like no one really cares about.
Like, Lydia, I'm so tired of seeing you in another cocktail dress on your Instagram story. It's getting boring. And also the sister Mary, I don't know if like you caught her, but she was the one who was always like playing the piano, and she's kind of like pious, like, let's read these sermons, that kind of thing. I think Mary would just not have social media. And I also think Kitty, the sister that follows after, I think Kitty, who follows after Lydia a lot, she would, just be trying to like match her, Instagram aesthetic, but not get it the right way. But no, I definitely think those perspectives are pretty great. So moving on. So why is this novel that the movie is based on? Why is this novel so popular?
When I think about it, I'd have to say, like, I've only like really seen the movie, but I would just say, just based off of what I've seen in the movie, I'd say it's very popular because even though it was written in like that 1800s, like the 1813 time frame, right around there, I'd say it's still very popular because people can still relate to the characters. So I guess it's one of those literature works that's kind of timeless in that, yes, you could very easily, and kind of that low-hanging fruit of apply it to the time that it was written in. But you can also apply like how the romance progresses. Like some people would just do it just because like, oh, I want this secure, stable life, or I want to have this appearance of, oh, I'm actually rich, when it's really just I'm married into the money or that. And it's like some people, like eventually you see like Darcy and Elizabeth have that kind of true love, I guess. Not necessarily true love, but more of the romantic relationship instead of just the looking at it as, oh, this is for the benefit of both our families in terms of land ownership. So I guess, in short, it's very relatable for a lot of people from different perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why a lot of people, including me, find this book very interesting because there are so many different angles that you can, discover and experience it through.
I also have not read the book. I've just watched the movie, but I was going into this thinking that I was not going to like the movie. But I was very surprised that I actually did like the movie, and since it was on YouTube, they had ads, and all of a sudden it just stopped and be like, what the heck? Like, I wanted to watch more. But I think also it's a classic, and there are so many books that have been written throughout time that fall into that category, and I think that from what I've heard, it is just one of those staple love romance books that kind of paved the way for romance today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Jane Austen, she was very much a history maker in the genre, and she initially, when she first started publishing, she didn't have much luck, but later on in her career, her novels really took off, and Pride and Prejudice is still one of like the top books that she has written, and people keep coming back to it. So maybe my question is there a part of the movie or just part of this story that would make you want to come back?
I would have to say that ultimately I think it's the conversation that Darcy has with Lady Catherine, because I've seen this in many other books I've read. So like kind of an off-topic related one is a Spanish book from Latin America during the boom era from Laura Esquivel is La Casa de Espíritus, or even or no, not that one, Como Agua para Chocolate, which is like water for chocolate. And in that you kind of see like this love story develop, and how even then in the Mexican culture, it was expected that the youngest daughter stays to take care of the family when everyone else, once they're like old and can't work anymore. So kind of like fighting that social norm. And then even like, because I think Lady Catherine, like you see that, like she kind of expected Darcy to listen to her just because she's his rich aunt. And you kind of see him go like, no, I'm going to think for myself in this moment. So, like, I guess that's what would make it be so willing to come back to, is you can see, like, there's this guy that in the very beginning you're like, oh, I hate this guy. He's like such a stuck-up prick. But then as the story progresses, it's like, oh, he actually changed quite a bit. And it's like, you can learn from that. And it's always something that you can recommend to someone new to read this, and it's, you can kind of see it click, like, especially when I watch the movie, it's like, that makes a lot of sense. So it's like I kind of want to watch this more and actually like read the novel now.
So you're hooked now, Nick, and you're saying you need a copy of Pride and Prejudice.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Brayden, would you maybe think about either like listening to an audiobook of the novel or reading the book in future?
I think I'd read the book. I'd probably go get it, honestly, soon. I really like the plot. I like the character development. I liked how everybody was unique. I enjoyed the story, so yeah, I would probably read it.
Wow, we have some brand new baby Jane Austen fans. I am so happy. So, congratulations, guys. Welcome to the Austen universe, and I encourage you and our listeners to follow Gently Read, because we are going to be diving more into the world of Jane Austen and her contemporaries and writers who write spin-offs and other some sort. So please stay, listen, learn, because we are all gently read. Thank you for listening to Gently Read, the podcast about Jane Austen, the romance genre, and anything therein. So you can find us on YouTube at Aurora Fenzl, and please like, comment, and subscribe to this content so that you can stay up to date, get notifications, and also just let me know, your host, know what you want to hear, because I need to hear from you. So again, thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.